Our next guest is Andy Moreno, who does food testing. What? I have to read this. Food testing for human bacterial pathogens. It's a mouthful. But your lab is the HSG AME certified laboratory. So what exactly do you do out there?
Well, we have 25 labs in the food processing facilities that give an immediate response to the food producer on each lot, whether or not there's a presence of primarily E. coli, Salmonella, and Listeria.
Well, immediate is the key word there, right?
Within
They
an
need to
hour.
know. They need to know right away if there's a problem with anything
Within an hour,
they're
it is
shipping
called
out.
test and release as a protocol for food safety.
So the food isn't released until they get those test results back?
That's correct.
Wow.
And it's a revolution that we're trying to start in the industry, particularly here in the Central Valley. We have many major food producers and food groups that we really like fruits and vegetables.
Absolutely.
What we're finding in the United States is that 38% of all fresh produce is actually grown in Mexico and shipped across the border.
I actually thought it was more than that, but
It's higher at certain times of the year. What the Mexican government is actually one of my clients, and this technique that we use is called DNA testing. That's why we can get a result within an hour. The challenge is traditional methodologies require 4 to 17 days, primarily for Listeria and Salmonella.
and the food would have already been out there for a couple of weeks if
Fresh
that was the
produce
case.
is a particularly big challenge with cantaloupes. As you recall, a couple of years ago, we had the Jensen brothers in Colorado. Their cantaloupes killed 31 people. Also, the challenge there was that they had a new food safety testing audit recently that they were scored at 96% and yet killed 33 people. So the two of the largest cantaloupe producers in the world contacted us, and they now do DNA testing prior to release of all their
Thank
products.
goodness.
And that's the revolution we're trying to start. The government has a new law that will be enacted, signed by President Obama a couple of years ago, called the Food Safety Modernization Act, known in the industry as FSMA. The challenge with FSMA is it does not require food testing. The Obama administration particularly took out food testing in their budgetary requirements for the draft of food safety because they felt with the new health law, their new health bill, that they added up the total number of food contamination events serviced in hospitals and then the total predicted cost of food testing. So they went with the hospital care instead.
Wow.
And with their
That's a dangerous shortcut there.
It is a challenge for food producers that don't want to be sued, lose their business, or as in the case of the Jensen brothers, both lost their grandparents' business, and both went to jail and lost all their credit. Now they're home confinement.
Now, is it only fruits and veggies you can do this test on, or do you do meat also?
Meat is governed by the USDA,
Totally different.
and they have their own perspectives, but we can use our same within 1 hour technology as opposed to traditional methodologies for beef, which is E. coli 0157H7. These are organisms that live in the stomachs of cows, that when the carcass is then split at the production facility, their stomachs are cut open so there's a splashing effect throughout the entire product, and it's not effectively washed off. That's why we had the Jack-in-the-Box outbreak. That's why we have a lot of other food-oriented outbreaks.
Well, Foster Farms still having problems.
That's an
Months
excellent
after-
example. I was just about ready to raise it. The organism of target of interest there is called Salmonella. And the issue is that these birds are raised in their own feces, if you've ever been out to one of these factories. So to remove the Salmonella from their carcasses is a chemical process which is less than efficient. So that's why almost every chicken that's sent out fresh or otherwise frozen is contaminated. That's why in your home preparation you should have that surface where you prepare it and immediately sterilize it, primarily
And
with
cook
a
the
chlorine.
meat to its whatever
and cook
degree.
it to its absolute, and that's why we have cooked it since the Stone Age to kill bacteria.
When I have friends who eat very rare hamburgers, I say, "You're crazy."
There's a challenge.
Give me mine well done.
Hamburger is a combination. It's been ground off of the bone. So one contaminated animal in that batch of thousands of pounds of hamburger will contaminate
your
the
patty
entire
doesn't
lot.
come from one animal. It comes from thousands mixed together. Right?
And that represents one of the challenges we have in food, particularly the Central Valley. It's predicted by the year 2050 we'll have 9 billion people on the planet. So food producers have to produce more food, up to 60% more production to feed that population.
Wow.
What we're finding, and if you notice around the valley, more farmland is being substituted for other uses, primarily housing. So that take-up has to be taken up someplace, and their production has to increase, so it's coming from Mexico.
Wow.
And their
All right.
concepts of germ virility is much different than ours. Cleanliness.
But if they want to continue selling to the U.S., they have to prove that their food is safe.
Well, there'll be the new law will require 100% of all the food to be screened prior to enter the United States market. The fact is the FDA is only screening 2%. So when you eat anything, there's a challenge if it has not been tested.
Yeah. All right. If you've piqued anybody's interest out there, how can they find out more about your company?
At AME-QPCR.com. I also have an online blog talk radio show. It's called the AME Food Testing Show. The show is primarily designed for food managers, which has been my biggest challenge. The average age of a food plant manager is 60 years old, so they have a preset, which is my age, by the way, which is have the preset notion of what is food and what's the minimum requirement. That's my biggest challenge. They always ask me, Andy, what's the minimum the government needs to know? So my personal mantra has been, food consumers need to ask and use their power of buying only from pre-tested products for the good of their families. And you see the Obama administration, I go back to them, because they are a big supporter of huge chemical companies that are supporting GMO. But in the White House, they only serve non-GMO organic food, which is somewhat ironic.
Put your money where your mouth is, right? All right. And I wish we had more time to talk. But thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you very much.